Hey there, thanks for tuning back in to another episode. We got a great one in store for you. We have quarterbacks all show long and a special guest to help us break down our quarterback rookie rankings. You're not going to want to miss this. So Operation Domination starts now.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris
Hearing
Dowhouse,
about disappointments in fantasy in the sense
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
But there is somebody else that we want to talk about from a fantasy standpoint in particular. He gets kind of exciting, right? And that's Jalen Milroe. And look, there's a wide range on where this guy could be drafted. The team's going to have to fall in love with him. The point with him, when you're talking fantasy standpoint, is that like you are the best rusher. When it comes to that cheat code, you are the guy. 745 rushing yards. But Chris, when you look at Jalen Milroe, I mean, what's your realistic expectations for a player like this? Where would you value him at in a rookie dynasty draft?
Yeah, I have him as my third quarterback in fantasy. I don't think, for me, I kind of disagree with Jeremy. I think there's a huge drop off after the first two, and then I think there's everybody else from about 3 to 8. So I think Jackson Dart could be thrown in that mix. I think some guys thrown in the mix we'll talk about. But I think for me, Jalen Milroe has the highest upside of those guys in that mix. People talk about the upside of Jackson Dart being able to run the ball. I think Jackson Dart has that kind of illusion of being an athlete. Yes, he can use athleticism, but it's not game-changing athleticism. While you have a quarterback in Jalen Milroe who can carry you with a running attack and his ability to run the ball. He has the arm strength. It's not something that we kind of just think he has an arm, or sometimes he makes some certain throws. He has a legitimate arm. Now, the problem with him, of course, is it going to go where it's supposed to go? Is it going to be, is he going to read defenses? I think a lot of those things are going to be issues for him. Jeremy talked about the fit. I think people know what they're going to get in Jalen Milroe, which kind of helps him in some ways. You shouldn't ask him to sit there and be Tom Brady and start spreading the ball around. But as a result, you usually get fantasy production. And I think in a lot of ways, he can be and I don't want to get this too twisted, but I think he could be a poor man's Jaden Daniels, or a poor man's, or actually a version of Anthony Richardson who doesn't play, because he can do things that Anthony Richardson everybody got tantalized by, but actually produce with. He does run the ball consistently. We talked about Anthony Richardson's rushing numbers aren't necessarily what you think they are in the NFL. You also have Jalen Milroe has the ability to be more accurate. And he's not the guy who I think is going to be, one of the pretty contests in accuracy, but it is a guy who can make some throws, has gotten better as he got progressed. I saw actual improvement versus Anthony Richardson, who I saw no improvement out of Florida. And then we talked about, last week's show where I had to kind of, see improvement as he got benched, but it took him getting benched to finally work on the craft. Where versus this guy who I think Jalen Milroe realizes he's got to get better. He got better this year in Alabama. It wasn't a whole lot better, but I saw improvement. And the accuracy, hey, if you just get a couple more passes completed, Anthony Richardson wasn't, people were still okay with him being started just going into the season because he was pretty productive when he played. So you can win with these quarterbacks who don't necessarily complete a high percentage. Jalen Hurts is a guy kind of jumps in my mind. And fantasy-wise, we know the guys who can run, the guys who can be physical, and a guy who can take hits, especially in that red zone area, tend to be gold mines. So Jalen Milroe is a guy who I would definitely take a shot in Dynasty as that third quarterback on my board.
Yeah, it's just, look, he's got the upside, right? He's got the physicality. I still wish he would have ran the 40 just so you can see exactly how fast he would have been at the combine. I know, but I'm saying at the combine. Pro days, you get a little wonky. I got to add 0.5 of it or 0.05 of a second, and we got to get on to all that and who was actually using the stopwatch. My point being is that if he actually ran, even though we know he's fast, it's one of those guys that if he actually ran at the combine, he probably would have got hyped up even more because they saw how much faster he is than every other quarterback, almost double counting in some senses there. It would have actually helped his draft capital, which I think is a big case of Milroe. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. Yeah, I've heard that comp before. And now Jalen Hurts by no means coming out was a great passer. He's somebody who had to develop, and he still has issues to this day making reads and whatnot. But mechanically, he was still superior to where Jalen Milroe is now. So for me, when I look at Milroe, I'm like, are you going to get drafted in the third round in the NFL draft, that is? Or are you going to get drafted in the back end of day 3? I think that's going to make all the difference in the world. If he gets drafted in the third round, I think he's got a real chance for a team to actually want to spend the time to develop him. If he's going to go to back end of day 3, we may never hear from him again because of where he's at as a passing quarterback. My comp for him was Malik Willis from that standpoint, the guy who needed to get ripped down. Now, the good thing about Willis is that, well, he has some pop now, right? We got to start for a few games for Jordan Love, performed pretty well on the ground. They played to his strengths, and still wasn't the greatest of passers, but now maybe he's somebody who could wind up down the road getting a shot again at some point because he had that. I could see something happening for Jalen Milroe, but his draft capital is going to go a long way in as far as, am I talking about a guy 6 years from now maybe gets a shot, or a guy who maybe 2 years from now, depending upon his situation, gets a legitimate shot? And I think that's the kind of the case with Jalen Milroe, because he's bad from everything inside the pocket. Like his pressure sack ratio is 18%, even though this guy's fast, because he just has a lot of bad post snap reads. The only thing that's nice about him is his average depth of target, is his big time throw rate, but that's about it. It's a lot you gotta move on. You gotta move up from there. Jeremy, when you look at Jalen Milroe, is this the wild card of the class, or are you just out because, like, look, I don't know if this guy's ever going to play?
I have him at 3, begrudgingly. I just feel like you got to lean a little bit on like the athleticism. He feels closer to Jalen Hurts than like Anthony Richardson would be, I'd say, as a prospect. Like, I feel like day 2 kind of makes sense for him somewhere. He is further along as a passer than Anthony Richardson. By no means is he prolific. And does he have a long way to go? Yes. But in the right spot, and I don't know what that right spot is because, Philadelphia already has a quarterback.
Pittsburgh.
I don't know what would be right. I maybe Pittsburgh, if Arthur Smith is fine with just never throwing the football. But now with DK Metcalf and George Pickens, I don't know if that's going to go over very well for very long. Maybe that's a spot. Honestly, to tell you the truth, I'd really like him to go.
What about the Rams?
No, see, I prefer Indianapolis. I'd rather him just go to Indy and because I could see him beating Anthony Richardson now. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I only mentioned the Rams because there's a lot of talk about the Rams wanting to go in a different direction after Matthew Stafford getting that mobile type of quarterback. He gets to sit there, develop for 2 years with a really good offensive guru, really good quarterback mentor. And one thing, and I think Chris mentioned it, Jalen Milroe, there's no doubt about his work ethic. This guy does work. He does try to actively get better. I just think from that standpoint, that was kind of interesting to me. I don't know. That's where I was coming from.
And yeah, I could see it. I don't know if that's McVay's. I know they're saying that, but McVay wanted Jared Goff, then he got Matt Stafford. He wants that pocket passer, spread the ball around, get it out, and I'm sure they want to maybe go a different direction because they've struggled to get an offensive line that can do anything. But to me, I feel like there's other guys in this class that they would have more allure to, that I'm sure we'll get to here maybe in a few minutes. If not, we'll talk about them at the end. I'll throw their name out there.
Well, I think I know you're going to talk about, but I got to get Adam in here, so maybe we'll have Adam talk about him first. Tyler Shough. This is somebody who's been moving up boards. I know he's moved up my board, and again, not a lot to say with a quarterback class like this, where you're looking for, show me something. Show me some kind of physical attribute I can latch onto. Show me some kind of process in your post-snap reads or pre-snap reads that I can lock. Show me something that translates. And Tyler Shough did that. He blew the combine away. I didn't expect him. I watched his tape in Louisville. He looked fine. I didn't expect him to run a 4.63. That completely and utterly surprised me that he was that quick off the line. This is an old guy, right? 25.4 years old or 25.6 years old now. And unfortunately for him, it was 3 major injuries. So you're worried about injury. It didn't really break out until his age 25 season in Louisville. because he was backing up Justin Herbert. Just think about that. This guy was backing up Justin Herbert in Oregon. That's how far back his college career goes. He was backing up Justin Herbert. When you really think about that, it's just kind of mind-boggling to me. But he is quick. He is accurate. He's 38th in adjusted completion percentage. He does make some big-time throws, 41st in big-time throw rate, and he takes care of the football, only a 1.8% turnover rate. So there's some things to like here. I comped him to Clayton Tune, and I know that doesn't get everybody all excited in their pants, but he has the big size, he has the mobility, and he has the arm you like. The question is, can he put it all together at the next level? Adam, what do you think about Tyler Shough?
I like him. He's my QB4 in this class after Milroe. He's someone who, look, I was really impressed. I wasn't that surprised by the 40 time, to be honest with you. I thought he looked pretty athletic on tape. I was really impressed with what I saw as a guy who, at the time, wasn't really getting a ton of talk. That definitely picked up once we got to the combine. But, man, I like him. To me, he's the most interesting of these, him and Milroe, the guys who I want to build up if I'm trying to teach someone how to play quarterback. The injuries, the age, definitely concern on the age front. At least I'll say, at Oregon as a redshirt sophomore, he wasn't having a bad season when he was on the field. None of these stops have been like, oh, he sucks. It's been like, oh, he's hurt, or, oh, this starter is really good. It hasn't really seemed like his ability is ever the primary issue here. The other thing that I'll say with him, the arm strength, he's not Jalen Milroe, but what he is definitely, like, he has an NFL arm. He can complete NFL throws. He can throw outside the hashes. He can do those types of things. The other thing I'll say with Tyler Shough is he wasn't extraordinary really prior to the Louisville season. But once we get to Louisville, he was fantastic in pressure to sack and turnover worthy play rate last season. Now, the rest of his career, middling, nothing like extraordinary. But again, these are all super small samples prior to last year. I think he has an NFL skill set. He is one of these guys who you are probably teaching him how to read the game, but I thought he was really accurate on tape last season at all levels of the field. He was someone who I was really impressed with in that regards. I think he's a natural quarterback and someone who can have potentially have a much better pro career than he did in college.
Chris, what's your take here as the old man on the show? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there's a lot of old men in general in this draft. We saw Bo Nix was in college forever last year as well. Tyler Shough, to me, is a guy that I have fourth on my board as well. I kind of agree with Adam. Look, I'm not thrilled, like I said, between 3 to 7, 3 to 8 guys. I think they're all projects in a lot of ways. It's all going to be, there's a lot of coaching fit kind of work for you that Jeremy kind of alluded to. It's all about kind of what's around you to be able to succeed. But this guy reminds me a lot of Sam Darnold. That's what I see in the guy. I see a guy that if he has the right skill set around him, right players around him, he can kind of make things happen. He likes to be aggressive down the field if he can. He likes to be able to push it outside the hashes, which a lot of guys in this NFL today don't do very well. He's a decent athlete. He can scramble and use his legs if need be. But a guy that is a little bit late on his throws, does get a little happy feet when there's pressure, does have a little older, does have a tendency to break down his mechanics sometimes, especially when he's on the move and throwing. So there's things that I do have some issues with Shough in general. I'm not necessarily blown away. I haven't talked about his 40. You can see the athleticism, but you're not going to see necessarily a guy who's going to run like Michael Vick or run ridiculously. But like I said, like a Sam Darnold, like a Daniel Jones, a guy who can possibly use his legs, a guy who can be effective in the RPO action. He does look the part in a sense. He's 6'5", 6'4", has solid body fit. But the injuries is probably the things I'm biggest concerned about. The guy who has that much injury history, a lot of things that can go wrong for that. So as an athlete, you got to kind of not make people miss, but you can see as like Daniel Jones, once he had that kind of injury, how much that affected him. If you're not that great in the first place, you get injured, it can definitely set you back. So it's a guy, Dan, in fantasy wise, I'll take a shot, but I'm not spending very high draft capital on Tyler Shough.
No. This is totally like if you're in the 4th, 5th round, it maybe even be able to get him not drafted potentially. But as somebody who had been climbing up the boards, Jeremy, is this who you had in mind? Chris mentioned Sam Bradford, Rams. Is that what you're talking about?
Negative. That is not.
What's your take though?
My take on Tyler Shough. Yeah, I'm not overly excited. Old player. It's probably why he was better. It's usually what happens with the quarterbacks. The older they get, especially at the collegiate level, they get better. Feels like a career backup. I just don't think he's going to get a shot to be a starter. I mean, maybe he gets a shot. I just don't think it's going to succeed, kind of like Sam Darnold, like Chris had mentioned. Not that I totally agree that they're the same player, but nor that they're going to get the same draft capital, but feels like a guy that if he gets anywhere close to a shot, it likely doesn't work out the first time around, and then just journeymans his way around, potentially gets a shot later in his career. Not really overly excited. I like the Clayton Tune call. That's basically probably what his NFL career is going to be as well.
I think
that's kind of what I saw.
I think you're going to have higher draft capital than Clayton Tune. I think that's going to be the big difference. Like, I didn't put my board necessarily based on draft capital. I know we didn't talk about the start of the show that we're going to, but a lot of this opportunity for you to get a chance to start. But from what I'm hearing, a lot of those teams talk about at the beginning of the show with the Giants, Cleveland. If they don't get one of those quarterbacks in the top, a lot of them talking about trading, back in that first half, the first or the back or beginning of the second, and taking one of those quarterbacks. So, and Shough is the guy that seems to be one of those high guys on the board.
I think it's a mistake.
Well, I'm not going to argue that, but
of course, I'm not an NFL GM, so for a reason. So I don't know.
We all could be. All right, so let's end the show on our sleepers. Jeremy, what's one quarterback sleeper we didn't talk about that you have your eye on?
I think the guy after the top's Kyle McCord, personally. I like a lot about. I like Riley Leonard. I think Riley Leonard brings some stuff to the table. Talk about winning culture, kind of a guy that can rally teams. I think he's interesting. But really, Kyle McCord seems like. Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle McCord, though, is really kind of the guy. ACC record this past year, over 4,700 passing yards. Has a career interception rate of only 2%, so another guy that doesn't really turn the football over, and has a plethora of passes. So, I mean, he has over 900 passing attempts in his career at the collegiate level, and that was really only in 2 seasons because the other 2 prior, he had less than 50 total. So he's a guy that's willing to chuck the football around the field at a 66% completion percentage this past year at Syracuse on a program that doesn't have anybody when you're talking about help on the field. So, 34 touchdowns this past season. Proved that he could play at Ohio State. It wasn't to Ohio State standards necessarily, but I do think that in the right situation, Kyle McCord, the Rams, could be a very good NFL quarterback. He has a lot of those tools. He has the arm talent to put it wherever he needs to. A little bit of his problem is overly being a gunslinger at times. So he gets a little rambunctious there. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. More mobility than he's given credit for, and just a lot of physical tools that are there, but he needs some time. So I think that's where a situation, the Rams, even the Giants, if they chose to wait a little bit, play behind Russell Wilson a little, give him a shot or something to that extent. I do think that McCord has at least the talent to be a backup for a long time at the NFL level and potentially get a shot, maybe the Geno Smith career arc, later in his career. Not a guy I'm really drafting outside of Superflex leagues, but interesting for me late in the 4th round of a Superflex rookie draft, no matter where he goes.
Well, since you stole my guy, I totally agree with you, obviously, for a lot of the reasons you just kind of laid out there. The biggest one for me, and we've talked about how important it is to see these guys improve. This is a totally different quarterback I felt like I saw in Syracuse and what I saw in Ohio State. When it came to specifically his footwork mechanics, he actually finally got his feet planted shoulder width apart, not super overextended wide, not falling off his tippy toes, not throwing off his heel. He got his footwork mechanics really down there in Syracuse, and it paid off in a big way where all of a sudden, to your point, he's able to make all the NFL throws, and it's obvious he's able to make all the NFL throws that I questioned with his ability to really be able to do in Ohio State. So big market improvement in my mind from what I saw there in Syracuse. That was the big number one thing. I see I comp them to Derek Carr. I see a lot of Kirk Cousins. I see a lot of Brock Purdy. Guys who have good arms, who can hit all the throws. They're not necessarily going to blow you away in any capacity. They're not going to be the overly great, mobile scramblers or anything like that. But he's a guy who plays in that type of West Coast zone system. He fits it so well. It fits it so well in play action, hitting that intermediate throw. To your point, and it's kind of the Jackson Dart thing as well. I don't know what it is with these guys, this quarterback, this class. Nobody can layer the football. It's all like, I got to see a beeline in order to get it there. If I have to layer this and drop this in a bucket at all, it's getting picked off or it's going to be late behind the wide receiver. He also suffers from that as of now. But because he made that improvement that he did from Ohio State to Syracuse, that a lot of it comes with mechanics. To your point, if he takes another couple of years, is able to keep tweaking that, keep working on that. This is a guy who I see like, you look like an actual NFL quarterback passer to me. And that's something I cannot say about a lot of the quarterbacks in this class. So I second your Kyle McCord sleeper. Adam, who's your sleeper you have your eye on?
Well, the answer is really Shough. Like, I think he is a sleeper just in the sense that, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I talked, how much I like him. I have a day 3 grade on him. In fact, I have a day 1 grade on Cam Ward, a day 2 on Shedeur and Milroe, and everyone else in this class to me is a day 3 guy. So then the other guy who I think is worth drafting before the 6th round outside of Ward, Sanders, Milroe, Shough, and Dart is I think Dillon Gabriel is going to be a backup in this league for a long time. I don't think he's ever someone who you should ever give a starting opportunity to. Let's be clear. And that's functionally what the end of this draft is. There's nobody who I'm particularly interested in giving a shot. I think the teams that are trying out Quinn Ewers, for example, are out of their minds for even considering such an idea. But with Dillon Gabriel, I think he understands the game fairly well. To me, he is the guy who understands pressure, by far the best in this class. I think the only argument is the guy who you just talked about in Kyle McCord. And I'll give the shout out to Shough, who did it really well 1 year at Louisville, but has no long-term sustained success within the pocket and within, uncovering pressure. To me, that's really impressive. I didn't think he was particularly accurate, but his completion percentage to me is fairly high. Was, I believe, I have the number right here, 97th percentile as well, right in line with Shedeur Sanders. I think he's less accurate than Shedeur Sanders, but I think that's a testament to him understanding the defenses. And all of that having been said, he's going to be someone who's in quarterback rooms for a long, long time, just because he can be the guy that's holding I was going to say clipboard, but these days it's a tablet. But nonetheless, he's going to be that guy, I think, for a long time. And I think he's someone who, in the right system, you're not necessarily afraid to play the wide receivers when the quarterback goes down. Now, I'm never playing him. He'll never be in a fantasy starting lineup, even in Superflex. Let's be super clear. But, he's someone who's going to bounce around the league, in my opinion, for a while, and a name that I think you should know, like, at least going into the NFL.
Okay. All right. Chris, who's your sleeper?
I'll go with Curtis York from Indiana, a guy who I like a lot in the NFL, but also a guy that fantasy-wise I think has a chance to be productive. A guy who was effective in the red zone, was the highest PFF scoring guy in the red zone last year. Last 2 years is one of the metrics leaders of under pressure. So I about guys under pressure. Has the prototypical size, 6'4", 220. Has some good mobility. The issue I was worried about with him is he does have an injury history. That's why he's kind of been around. But his production was very great in Indiana last year. He played in the second half of the season injured for the entire half of the season. Still was able to kind of be very productive, 29 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. He doesn't turn the ball over, guys. He doesn't turn the ball over. 7 interceptions is the most he's had as a starter. Usually have between 25 to 30 touchdown passes per season. It's a guy that, like I said, has decent mobility, has decent athleticism, can make all different throws, doesn't turn the ball over. A guy who I think in today's NFL can get on the field, maybe be a productive starter for a couple of weeks here or there, maybe for a season or two. Adam talked about different guys. They have chances. Like I said, 3 for. I'm looking for guys who I think have the best chance of being a prolonged opportunity and keeping it. Nathan Rourke's one of those guys who I think if he gets on the field, has a chance to actually become a starter for a period of time and maybe could actually become somebody's franchise quarterback down the road. Is this somebody I go draft a lot, high on fantasy, like I said, but you talked about some guys taking flyers on the 4th, 5th round. Nathan Rourke, to me, is a guy that I take that shot on just a little bit before Kyle McCord.
I like it. Well, guys, it's going to wrap it up for our quarterback rookie edition. I cannot wait for the draft. By the way, just to throw this in here real quick, we are going to have a live draft special live from Nashville from the Fantasy Football Advice Network. So make sure you guys are tuning in for that, because that's going to go, obviously on YouTube at FF Advice Net. And it's going to be a great, fantastic time on that Thursday night for that first round. Maybe day 2. We're still working on the details on that part, but definitely day 1. So make sure you check out Fantasy Football Advice Network. Make sure you check out Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app available to you. And Jeremy, man, thank you so much for coming on to the show. This is an annual thing. I look forward to this every year now, having you on. It's been a fantastic time. And let people know, who you are, where to follow you at, what you want them to check out.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again for having me. It's always a blast. I enjoy it. But they can find me on X or Blue Sky at Popes FFH. Pretty much I link everything and anything there. The FTN Dynasty podcast as well, if you're more of a podcast person. And then all the written work and everything like that is over at ftnfantasy.com.
Awesome. Guys, we'll see you next week for the running backs. We'll have another guest on for that too. That's going to be a big conversation we're going to have because the running backs are here to stay in 2025. We'll see you next week.